Grand Rising. It has been 2 months since the last time I spoke to you guys. Um, there have been lots of things that have occurred since then, and a multitude of ideas that I wanted to record, but I haven't been recording. Um, for this episode, I don't remember which number we are on right now because I skipped 2 months. So let's say that I can count. We're going to say this is episode 4 of season 2 because I skipped April, which was 4, and May, which was 5, and now we're in June, and it's 3rd. It's June 3rd. So yes, episode 4 of season 2. I didn't take any footnotes for this, but I did have a lot of inspiration over the last 2 months time period to kind of convey a lot of what I really want to communicate in this particular podcast. Um, I've been having some outside intervention, influence, engagement. I've been dealing with people more, so I've had less time to have my own thoughts, at least to display them out loud. And it's been, I wouldn't say harrowing, like I'm in danger. I would say that it has been, I've noted in my continuous process that when I engage with other people, and I used to say it in a much more harmful way, when I engage with other people, their emotional output tends to become prevalent in my emotional set, like complaining, anger, frustration, sadness, bouts of depression, because I don't believe that you can have depression. I believe you can experience depression, like how if you were going across a road, there can be a depression in it, but I do not think the entirety of the road is a depression unless it sinks into a valley. But I digress, because there's so many terminologies and so many semantics you can argue with that. And I'm talking about the caste system and describing physical objects, so forth and so on. But I digress. Today's topic, as I look at my podcast plus topics list, I want to have it be resilience. Now, I'm not sure if I already did resilience as a podcast topic, but that's what today's podcast is going to be about. That's what today's video is going to be about. That is what, like my hairline holding on for hope, it is going to be resilience. In my experience, resilience is what I would say is like my strongest quality. Persistence even could be a similar description of a characteristic when describing me, and the tag along with resilience. I'm saying a lot because I haven't had any practice with this. I literally haven't been making any podcasts. I literally haven't been making any TikToks. My conversations with people have been mostly via text or a engagement of the romantic kind, because still wanting to express levels of intimacy with other humans is a desired response that I have physically. But it doesn't necessarily have to be sexually. And I acknowledge and appreciate wholeheartedly that because there's so much trauma in this society, that it's often difficult to even get what I'm looking for in a safe manner via how I think it's interpreted. But again, I digress. I'm persistent and I'm resilient to the continued loss that occurs when someone doesn't understand my placement or... Oh, did my light just turn off? Nah, bitch. 1 second. Oh, maybe that's better because you can see my eyes. But also, I liked having Jesus the Christ! Damn. Okay, and I think I have it on the blue light. that's the warm one. Okay, the blue light. Oh, different colors? There's three. Ooh, fancy. Um, but yes, I unplugged my light by accident because I got a ring light. I know you can see it now because I made it such a thing when it turned off. Um, I acknowledge that it gives better lighting. Duh, that's what it's designed to do. But I didn't understand how, because I don't do makeup or anything like that. So I'm not familiar. See, look at my face. I'm not familiar with all of the. I'm not used to looking at all of my face in different lighting, and you can see like the dry patches from the amount of sugar I have consumed recently, and me getting out of the shower, and I don't get really upset about that stuff because I have the sugar, so this is the response to it. But then also in different lighting, so you get a different thing going on there. You get a completely different respect of what your face looks like. And again, I don't have any like shiny brown. Um, what's it called? I don't have any. I'm not a fashionista, so I don't need to do a thing. But I liked the ring light in my glasses. I saw it when I was at the store, and I was like, I want circle demon eyes. Um, Looking into your soul while I do a thing. But yeah, so I've been wanting a ring light for a really long time because I thought, and it is continuing to do so, but I got some stuff to set up before it can be like continuously that thing. But it's just, it's working, it's working. It's working, don't worry about it. It's working. I'm working on it. There are a lot of things that I'd like to do going forward that would provide a sense of stability for mental release, and I'm financially abundant already, so that's weird. Because you go through the phase where you like get into spirituality and manifestations is a real thing, and the secret and the laws of the universe, and you start really looking at it, but then you get to the point where at least I've gotten to the point where I recognize that manifestation is a lack. For me to say, I want, I need, it's coming, is the absence of it being present. And in my experience now, because this is my experience, and I don't do like an OnlyFans yet. But money comes to me very frequently in large amounts. Larger amounts than I'm used to being a poor homeless kid. Large amounts in comparison to my upbringing of having like no toilet in my house, my upbringing of not being able to take care of my children, my upbringing of not being financially secure for years, my upbringing of just a continued response to not having enough monetarily to make life comfortable. So acknowledging that that is what is occurring, I had to be okay with receiving large amounts of money from different sources for different reasons at different times. Like sometimes I'm not just handed money. Sometimes someone wants to pay for something, all of it, all the whole thing, whatever that thing may be. They're like, yeah. You look like you need one of these. Here this is for you. You should use this because I thought it would be useful for you to have. And a part of my learning slash healing slash growing process has been accepting that I deserve the stuff that's offered to me by the universe. That was most difficult because I'm used to having partners pay for stuff, yes, continuously. Oh my gosh, I was like, I would sex them down, they would pay for stuff, using sex work, using physical labor. I took care of people's houses. I literally like, I wouldn't say babysat people, but essentially, like, I had a lot of exes that would get high and drunk all the time, and I tried to match that energy, but I am a lightweight when it comes to intoxicants. Like, Benadryl will take me out if I took a Benadryl, and I haven't taken a Benadryl in years. Would just kick my ass. Um, Heck, the little herb mix that I make out of like just like collected herbs gets my body high enough. And this is after I've been smoking since I was 13, so like, it isn't like I don't have any kind of process or where for like, oh, what do I need to smoke? Um, I don't ever need to smoke as much as I was smoking. I don't ever need to drink as much as I was drinking. Like, a light beer would probably handle me, but I was doing stuff like binging to assault my emotions because at the time I didn't want to feel them. And now I understand that when I was doing that, it didn't necessarily help the emotions that I was feeling. It didn't take away from them. It didn't say, oh, these emotions aren't going anywhere. It said, in fact, remember all that stuff you wanted to say? Here's a time where you could say it. So, and I'm pretty good with like being earnest all the time in my expression. But even in the cases where alcohol was involved, I would become hyper aware of that, intently aware. I started, tracking things, counting things. Like my OCD would spike when I was drinking. I'd become almost detective level. And people say when I'm sober that they already feel like they're being interrogated because I have an interrogation style with questioning. I look for answers rather than like the emotional response behind the thing. Like, I don't really care why you did it. Like, what happened? But I acknowledge that that makes people feel uncomfortable because they are not science projects. And that is very uncomfortable to them. But to me, I just want to know why A plus B equals C. I don't need to know how A felt or how B felt. I want to know how we got to C. And that's been a continued thing that I have learned that has been difficult for a lot of people. I would like to express in this persistence, resilience, continued effort podcast / video, that one of the things that I didn't really hold to heart, and I'm not like a licensed clinician. I don't have a practice. I don't really respect that system a great deal, and I will say that very frequently. And a lot of people hold a lot of trust in the regards of psychology and psychological study, and I respect that observing a thing will give you knowledge about that thing. Do I feel like you can classify everything with several terms? No, I do not. As a farmer, as a person who cultivates plants, as a person who stewards life, I believe that everything has a very unique care process. So it is really hard for me, as someone who takes life into that much consideration, to think that everything can be kind of based off of several definitions, especially if the people who are designating the definitions don't apply the definitions to themselves when they relate to themselves. Everything is very experience-based. Everything is very situation. Everything is perspective, objective, subjectively. I think perspective, objective, subjective. Yeah. And so my experience, with being as resilient as I am, I'll talk a little bit more about that in my story and my expression of how I got to this point. Is like there have been terms thrown at me, but there has never been enough indicative evidence that would place the terminology on me where I could get fucking treatment for it. Because it's a situational based thing. If I have explosive anger, I wouldn't be explosively angry at the therapist that I'm talking to who is treating me with kindness, dignity, and respect. I would be explosively angry at my job where they're belittling me, or in my house where my parents are belittling me, or in school where I have a certain perspective about what it means to be a leader. I don't do boss mentality. You can't tell me what to do unless you're doing it. I very much need you to be down in the trenches with me doing it. Don't stand over me and point down. Stand in front of me or beside me and point forward. That's great. So in those respects, most of the terminologies that I have been quote unquote remarked as have only been like passing labels. But I got a bunch of them, and I thought for a while that they were like a great deal more that aligned with my personality traits. For a good while, I was like, oh, I'm a psychopath. You know, I'm willing to do whatever. But the fact that I have care and regard for people and don't outwardly go out to hurt people is that denotes that I'm not that particular interest. But again, I wouldn't accept the label anyways. But I looked at that book, the DSM, several versions of it, and went through variations of what is it called? Hypochondriac, where I kind of labeled myself a bunch of things. Let's see. Oh yeah, I'm trying to give you a story of like my upbringing, my background. So like, if you've already been with me for a little bit more time, and this is going to be like a reiterated thing. I try to tell everyone that I say the same things over and over. So if you come to me with some bullshit and I don't talk like that, I will know that that's not something that I would say. I go out of my way to do my very best to communicate very consistently my thoughts and perspectives, and if they change or if my alignment changes, I am very clear with, oh yeah, no, I don't do that anymore. I don't practice that any longer. Like my aggressive outburst, you'll get like 30 seconds of it before I just walk away. Yeah, this is dumb. Is normally the thing I'll say. This whatever's happening in that moment. This is stupid, and then I'll go out of the way to leave and avoid you. I won't participate any longer with you in that relationship that we were trying to cultivate. That is no longer an option for me and or you. I don't understand why we would have anything further after that point. So yeah, if my alignment changes, I'm pretty clear on that. Give me a moment. My mouth is dry. I just got out of the shower, so I'm kind of dehydrated. I didn't moisturize or drink a bunch of water before I went into the shower, so. Big old piece of ice. Thank you for your patience. So back to being persistent and resilient. I'll have to go back and see if I made any videos like this, or if I should have like crossed that off. Because again, I talk about these things a lot, and I don't do the podcast frequently enough to remember. And I don't go back and listen to any of my stuff, like my music. I listen to my music, but I make those. I'm having a hard time trying to relay to someone. They're like, "Well, could you perform your music live?" I was like, "Probably not," because like I'm on my cell phone and I use the information that I have as far as like what knowledge I have to have made the video or the music, and then I post that in the day. That like I was like, "Oh, an idea for music." I make the music and then it's gone. I ain't got no lyrics yet. Study a thing. It's more like an artistic piece. It's more like a continued flow, recorded. And I know there are like chaos pads for like loopers and so forth and so on, but I never learned how to do that. I learned via this app how to make music. So this app is how I process and deliver those media means. Um, One of the things that became like the best, not the best, one of the skills that grew most proficiently out of my continued experience in being resilient was the talking. I know you see me talk with my hands a lot of times, or I'm fiddling with something, or I have some kind of physical gesture occurring all at the same time. Um, Sorry, I got a little uncomfortable. Started realigning my shirt because I'm sitting on my yoga mat, which is my bed, and I don't have a little pillow up under my legs or my butt to keep me leaning forward. But you see me using my hands a lot to communicate my mother's death. Um, my mother's death. The whole sign. I wasn't signing the whole sign, so you wouldn't have interpreted that if you were a deaf person. Um, but the communication with my mouth. I used to have a stutter. The that I do very frequently is a part of that stutter. It evolved into the uhs. Um, Speech impediment. I think I used to slur a lot. I think I had an accent, and now I use very like pronounced, enunciated, um, white people language versus AAVE, which is African American Vernacular English, Ebonics. Pigeons speak in sign language would be like not ASL, it would be the English sign, because we have a reason to denote that diction isn't another language, or variations of a language aren't a language based upon colonialism. It has to be one very specific type. And so one of the things that I've learned is that through my communication skills, through my communication style, through my earnest, honest communication style, that I am more accepted in places where prior to this point in time I wouldn't have been so accepted. Um, I'm able to speak to people from the hood using the pronounced vocabulary or diction, the enunciated words where I'm going out of my way to use my whole mouth, to use the syllables to. I'm watching my mouth while I do this and finding entertainment in how my mouth is moving to one side more than the other side. But I'm able to communicate more effectively to people, whether they be white, black, hood, quote unquote, classes, colonists, colonizers who would say that I speak well, that I have very good diction, so forth and so on. That used to be a compliment to me. You articulate well used to be a compliment to me. Now I know that it was you articulate well for a black person, which is an insult. Like not all of us can be smart. Like all of us aren't smart. You will find some of the most intelligent people, no offense to their prior histories or what they had to engage in for survival, in jail. Some genius level people in jail have learned to do a multitude of things, but because we don't classify their intellect as, you know, whatever it might be, the skill may be engineering or problem solving or sure, there's so many variations. There's there's 9 types of intelligence with different varied levels in all of those 9 types of intelligence that we've come to study. But they aren't put in places where they could use those effectively, so they end up doing something that they learn how to survive with, which is great in its own regard. That's what I did. That's what I've done. That's what you've done. That's what you continue to do. That's what we continue to do. We take a skill that we've learned how to survive with, and we make it work for us. You may have been forced into your particular role. You know, I haven't gone to college and successfully graduated. I didn't even successfully graduate high school. I don't remember maintaining any job in all of my life for longer than a year. Now, I'm saying these things in this order, like this, so that the people who want to start diagnosing me on the other side of the computer start doing so based upon the book. Because there are very specific things that people who use that book and that classism, that caste system, CASTE, um, it was designed by a racist dude. It was recorded about white people, all of the studies that were taken to design all of what we understand as the psychological principles in the DSM, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. All of those were middle class white people who had very specific experiences, who dealt with very specific types of abuse in their particular lifestyles, which wasn't a broad range. And now we use those very specific terms and those very specific experiences based upon a very, very, very specific level of living for everybody. And it's not, it's just not given. It's not given for me. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy that very much at all. I do enjoy recognizing that there are a gajillion types of trees. I do enjoy that trees all do grow towards the sky. I do enjoy that different types of trees, whilst growing towards the sky, will also branch out differently. And then those branches will do the same likewise and so forth and so on. Some of them are deciduous, which loses their leaves and then come back the next year. Some of them are evergreen, which never loses their leaves and continues to shed leaves throughout the year entirely. Some of them have high acidity, some of them have low acidity, some of them are alkaline. I do appreciate and acknowledge that, that is how humans are. I use the expression quite frequently where I say, I treat humans like trees in the forest. Where I acknowledge that I don't go into the woods and say, this tree is in the wrong place. This log is in the wrong place. These mushrooms, these bushes, these life beings, these structures, these wonderful visuals are in a wrong place. I'm massaging my foot, by the way. They don't belong where they are. They have no reason to be there. It's not my place. It's not my place. My job. My job is to walk through the forest, acknowledging that they exist there, and being okay with that. Being okay with what side the moss grew on. Being okay with how many limbs have fallen. Being okay with it might rain. Oh, it is raining. I can smell it. I can smell it as a East Coaster. We have this thing where we say we can smell water in the air. Because I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, raised in Philadelphia. I don't tell trees no. I don't tell them they can't fall where they fall. I can't, I'm very okay with trees being where they are. But most of society, again, colonists, have decided that they are going to fix it. And I'm a big proprietor of walking through the forest and clearing paths. But I'm not so much into cutting trees down for paths. I'm what's the least amount of trees we can cut down so that we can get a good path through the forest? Because I'll take a bunch of all the everything, resources from everywhere, all the logs, and I'll make a good path with the stuff that I already found, but it was already on the ground. And I'll take hours doing that, days, months. If this video ever finds a woman named Laura who lived in Mossy Rock, Washington, I would love for her to try to record for you if it still stands, because I put a lot of work into it and it may not still be there, because that's just what nature does. It decomposes, and I'm okay with that. But I built a giant fire pit out of branches and tree limbs, and it took me a month or so to kind of drag all that stuff into one location. I had to find all of it and then weave it together and get it to not fall apart, because we had cows that would run around that lot, and they would brush up against it. So the cows kind of like gave me a really good working point because they would push against this thing and knock pieces off of it. And at first I was like, fucking cows, don't you do it. But it really allowed me to kind of refine this structure because I had to keep making it more tough, more dense. And the cows are like, oh my God, this is like, I'm doing like a little dance, but like cows rub up against stuff because they don't have arms to scratch themselves. So they were like, oh yeah, this is perfect. So even in that case, once I knew that that's what they were doing, I started making pieces like stick out so that they would do that specifically. And so that they could get a benefit from this structure being in there, like comfortable. And they're, you know, that's where they used to wander, and that's like one of the spots between the river and where they would get food. So if this video ever reaches them, Laura, then it would be wonderful if they were able to put some kind of display of that up. I haven't been back there. I hadn't had a lovely ending of our relationship when we stopped being in communication with one another. Fear and projections became a real thing at that point in time in my life between the both of us. So, I digress. I don't think I've had a lot of relationships with people entangled with other people end well. But I choose the solitary life now because I know that I'm supposed to go into lives and change them based upon my perspective of how earnesty, the word, is and how that looks via physical action. Wasn't as earnest in my childhood as I am now, but I learned through actions that I prefer being earnest over everything else simply because I don't like to have to try to remember stuff. My memory's garbage. It could be the forced trauma to my brain, being assaulted as a child continuously. People who were shorter than me liked to hit me in my head very frequently. It was a favorite pastime of a lot of short people. If you ever look up a teacher named Dante McLeod, he used to work at John Wister Elementary. He would go out of his way to literally ask me to get on my knees and smack the living shit out of me. So if child abuse is a thing and he can still be filed for it, he's like a bodybuilder now. I'll have to work on my gains before I can confront him in fisticuffs, or I can use violence of the, you know, pew-pew kind if that's ever necessary. But I healed from that and let that go. But the trauma of him smacking me as hard as he possibly could, as frequently as he possibly could, because he was shorter than me, I still have that. I still to this day don't like people to touch the back of my head if I am anywhere lower than them because of how frequently Dante McLeod, who was named after, what's his name? What's her name? Bethany McLeod, the school, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But anyway, I digress. It was a consistent thing for taller people to want to injure my brain. So I could have terrible memory because of that. I could have terrible memory because I smoked weed since I was 13. I could have terrible memory because of the constant reiterated trauma that I've experienced in my life, giving me brain damage because it's been consistent. Even up until this point, I'm consistently going through some kind of traumatic experience that is reiterated through either police force, relationships with white women, white people. There is no consistency in that behavior. An ally is a false thought, someone who wants to be on my side. It's only on my side until it's convenient for them to go back to being safe and comfortable. I haven't met anybody willing to sacrifice themselves for me, ever. My drunken ex was the first person I'd ever seen dive in front of a gun for me. But they were drunk. That's the only time I've ever seen that happen. So in their most inebriated state, 2 bottles and a half of wine down, after a huge argument, their love for me still kept them in a place where they would make me safe, but we couldn't have that same kind of safety in our relationship. I digress. So I have had people, had a person be willing to sacrifice their life to keep my life uh, from going out. That is an experience that I do have, but the inconsistency in that is I'm pretty much the only person I know wanting to keep me alive consistently and would sacrifice themselves in order to keep me alive. So, with that being said, we're like 35 minutes in. Good job making it to this point. I have been consistently keeping myself alive since 16, using whatever means that I could, sleeping with people. I was groomed as a 16-year-old by a 31-year-old woman who has 2 of my kids and lives in New York. Yeah, she wanted the kids, or she wanted the sex, but she didn't want the relationship with me. We used to have ice cream and play video games up until I turned 18. And then after 18, she got children out of me, and then for the next 2 years proceeded to psychologically torment me because it was fun to her. My son's mother, again, not victimizing myself because I'm a dangerous being when angry. And I was choosing anger prior to choosing how to, I mean, I choose anger after communicating my emotions. That's me saying, like, I'm sad, I'm upset. Why is this occurring? I ask questions a lot. That was one of the things that people tried to label me as autistic, and I would always try to problem solve. And that's like a really, really key characteristic of someone who is on the spectrum. Quick tip, if you didn't already know, being on the spectrum is like seeing all of the colors of a rainbow. Humans can only perceive like 0.2 something of the visible light. There's still, like, right behind me right now could be an entirety of a being in like ultra wave, ultraviolet light, and you couldn't see them because we don't perceive it with our eyes. Now maybe there's someone out there on the internet that can see this being behind me, but I digress. I'm just saying, like, most of us, a good majority of the people, can't see that particular wavelength. So when you say that someone is on the autistic spectrum, you are talking about every single human being. And it bothers me because we talk about very specific human beings. Like, there are terms like atypical, and terms like neurotypical, and terms like neurodivergent. And I don't know what those mean, because you're basically saying that there are variations to the beings that we are, which is like saying there's different types of gas, because air isn't all oxygen. Just, if you didn't know that, now you know. This isn't all oxygen. It is a multitude of gases. I'm currently breathing out carbon dioxide, so this room would not be filled with only oxygen if I am currently exhaling carbon dioxide. But back to my situation/story. Yeah, so in that scenario with that person, I chose anger, and then I chose to seek help for why I was getting angry at my child. Now, not knowing that men could get postpartum depression because no one told me. You can not give birth to a baby and be terribly depressed that you had a baby. Being an empath, or whatever label you want to call it, psychic, however you want to determine, I feel other people's emotions, whether it be through physical response or relationship of distance to that being. I was able to have the postpartum depression that my partner at the time was experiencing. There was no psychological help. There was no men's group for depressed ass men who had babies, and how to talk about that. At that time when I had my son, I couldn't understand why the sound of my son screaming would make me violently mad. Like, I wanted it to end. Like, I wanted to end a lot of things. Again, that's part of the postpartum depression. If you look up what women do via postpartum depression, You will see that it is more volatile than dropping their baby into a pile of pillows and then walking away from them. And that's what I did. And that's what got me removed out of my son's life. I have a daughter who lives in California with her mother, whose grandfather is racist. So if you ever see the Winsells and they're holding a slightly brown baby, that dad abuses the living shit out of all the women in his life. He molested his second oldest daughter and his oldest daughter, but more so his second oldest daughter because she had bigger boobs. And I didn't enjoy any of how he treated his wife because he would have preferred a Scandinavian blonde with blue eyes, and his wife was a very stout woman with a very loving and kind personality who chose to love him. If you feel like I'm airing people out, then that is your sensitivity to the issue, and I can give no fucks. This is my continued experience of being a perseverance. I wanted to be a father, a very, very loving, doting father. Most things that come in contact with me now get that love and doting. I have 10 miscarriages, so frequently more than not. I tell people I have a halo of dead babies, which is like a terrible statement unless you envision them being like little cherubim angels. If you imagine like dead little fetuses floating around my body, that is your thing. I often imagine them as cherubim, which are little angels with wings, like akin to what you would think Cupid looks like. So I very much wanted to be a person who had children. I have continued to touch and grace children's lives. Do what you will with that statement because you were fucking weird to the internet. I've continued to grace children's presences in different relationships and love them as much as I physically could, even if they weren't mine. Even especially when they're not mine, because I haven't had contact with my children for the longest. I have a 13-year-old daughter out there who I haven't seen since she was a year and a half because her mother kidnapped her and took her to New York and then made it about her. She said she had lupus, and her lupus made her have to go back to New York for some reason. And so she had the right to kidnap my daughters from Philadelphia and take them up to New York. And I haven't seen my second daughter ever, only via the video. So, you know, I practice non-attachment a lot because as a person who wants children, who wants to have a family, who wants to be regarded as a loving, doting, nurturing, paternal person, I am not able to get that. In order to keep sanity and not fluctuate through anger and aggression and consistent pissosity, I practice non-attachment very frequently. I consistently tell myself that I will get the thing when I need the thing, and I am having space from the thing because it is currently time for practice. Whatever that practice may be, could be maybe I need better skills to do something. Maybe there are more skills that I could be developing. Maybe I don't know. I just give everything a reason in the universe. You know, the reasons I've been raped, the reasons I've been abused, the reasons I've been assaulted, the reason I am outcasted. I give everything in the universe a reason, and it makes me so that I'm okay with having all the things that occurred to me have purpose. I would not be the quote unquote kind person in the camera, whether my humor be very dark and macabre. It doesn't detract from the fact that I still suffered immense amounts of trauma, still constantly suffer immense amounts of trauma, and consistently still decide that as the character we are, because this is all just one presentation, we're energetic beings that exist through the facilitation of our brain being able to interpret that energy so that our bodies are physically operable. And so this isn't me, this is a display. This is a character. I'm a sim. There should be a giant diamond above my head floating and spinning. But this is just a character that I put on. I put on I want to be calm. I put on I want to be peaceful. I put on I would like to enjoy the pleasantries, rainbows, watching little goslings, which is a small duck or a small geese, um, come up to you and eat bread from your hand because it trusts you, because it's seen you since the time it was born. It knows that you specifically will give it bread and be comfortable with it. Um, I like interpreting this energy as that out loud, because to me, the destructive force that I am when I am not this is uncomfortable and unpleasant to me. In my youth, before Thanos came out in the movie with the snap, I don't know how many people will be able to recognize me or quote me or hear me have saying it, but I walked around like through my teens to like the early 20s saying if I could kill everybody in the universe, I would do this. And then so like sometimes I'd be pissed in my pissosity and the expression of upset, and I would just snap a lot. And I say, one day, God's gonna do it. God's gonna give me the ability, and I'm gonna click, and everything's gonna go away. All of the humans will just disintegrate. So when they came out with that whole Thanos idea, it was great for me. Oh, just the camera shake a little bit. I'm not moving, and the floor is made of lava. It is solid, like it is very solid. So there's no. Maybe we're about to get an earthquake. But in that expression, I used to say like I would take everyone out. So this calmed me, the Thanos in the garden, because that's literally my interpretation now. Is I like gardening and farming and shit because I grew up watching people get their faces blasted and stabbed and punched and beaten and jumped and shot and people were like, well, your life wasn't that hard, just because I wasn't like running an HBO special where you could see all the stuff that I was going through or the experiences that I was going through, it was consistently a lot. And then for me to be in an environment where other people also had a lot going on and to be the facilitation of what I wanted to be a safe, I often chose to cater and care to those people experiencing other heightened situations. So I am privy to a great amount of situations. And experiences that make for painful, traumatic experience. Like if you were to say to someone today, like, choose a fence. Choose the fence if you need to. If you were to say to a white woman today, like, you have anxiety. I know white people who have anxiety, it's classified as a disorder, and they stay at home and the government sends them a check big and large enough that they can own and operate a leased vehicle and don't have to do anything. And I know tons of black women with trauma who need to be at home all day, not working because of trauma. Like, hell, I know a lot of black men with trauma who need to just garden. Yeah, so choose a fence. Choose a fence if you want to. I'm trans, as in like non-binary. I don't choose to identify as a male or a female. In my experience with the medical world, I have recognized or been recognized as an intersex person who has slight female attributes and slight male attributes, even to the physical disposition of my body, not developing one of my testicles fully, having breast tissue in both of my breasts, mammary glands, small enough, but they exist. There's a possibility for me to get breast cancer. Most people who have breast tissue, there's a possibility for them to get breast cancer, but mine is higher because there's actually a gland in there that would make milk that hasn't been reduced because of the testosterone that's supposed to happen in males. And I don't often privy this information to the whole world, but because of my continued experience, I'm not, with my sibling. They went out of the way to figure out how to communicate with me after I started expressing out loud that I didn't want a gender. I even went through the experience of almost removing all of my genitalia, which would have been all of my breast tissue and all of my testicular and phallic region, and they would have taken about 6 inches of my sphincter. If you're not familiar with your sphincter, it's the part of your anus, which is your booty hole, and then it goes in there just before your large intestines. But that part has nerves that feels comfortable. They would have taken all of that off of my body so that I would have been genderless, because that was the preference. Um, I was experiencing a lot of trauma in relation to I'm only the physical vessel, and that's often what people want of me. They often want my body. They often want my body to do something. They often want to feel safe near me, but the same safety that they feel with my largeness is often something that makes them feel terrified if they threaten my safety. What is that? It's like semi trucks are large, so you get out of their way. You don't drive at them. And so that's my experience, is consistently trying to, not trying, I do it, consistently doing an about face to what society says I'm supposed to be, and allowing myself to be what I am. And I think through my expression of allowing myself to be who I am, learning to be more specific with my phrasing. I think there's a book, it says precision of language. I go out of my way to a lot because I would rather use precision of language when I'm communicating. I would rather you know that this is the word that I would want to use when communicating this particular feeling. We are at 51 minutes and 34 seconds. I really just want to say thank you for all of my long-standing followers. It's probably like one or two people, but that's great. I learned that I'm being listened to from people who have VPNs in America, and they are listening to me, and it's showing up in other countries, which is great. But the consistency, or I guess I could say resilience, or the continued process is that you still want to listen, which is great. I appreciate that you want to listen. It often gives me joy that my words could help someone, whether they agree with them, whether they disagree with them, whether it helps you move along further in your process. Whatever that process may be. For a long while, I lived in the elitist life of, oh, well, you know, they're in a lower vibration, and they're lower on their path, and they'll get there when they get there. And I live that now. I live that they'll get there when they get there, wherever there is. We're in space, quote unquote, if you believe in space, because some people don't believe in space. So, you know, I try to stay real neutral in the middle. If you believe in space, then you acknowledge that there is no up, because up is very difficult in space. Directions are very difficult in space. So to say that there is a path is very difficult in space, because what path? What are we leading to? All I've got so far is that I can have one experience and then I can have another. And that this current experience that I'm having with you in this moment, that I'm recording alone right here in my room, that you will come back and watch, or have been watching, is the only experience like this one. I could make a million of these damn things, and this is the only one like this one. This is the only time that I've had this phrasing, the pausing, the hand movements, the gestures, the thought consistent with this, even if they were to create an AI based upon all the recordings and kind of, you know, assimilate my whole featurette and personality, this is the only time this will be this. And so thank you for sharing your experience with me, because that's the only time you'll be that. And you gave me some of your time. You gave this energetic response to try to you allowed me space to facilitate a growth in your thought process. You may not have thought like this prior to this point in time. Maybe you always thought like this and you didn't have anyone to like relay it to. Either way, I'm still very appreciative that we were able to recognize one another enough for you to say that this is something you wanted to do. we would recognize enough of um, one another to convene and convey that this was something you wanted to understand more of. Um, it's always super helpful to me in these experiences because um, when you get to the place that the universe is all one thing, it's lonely as fuck. In the happiest sad laugh I can muster. This is sad. This is saddening. Um, but the loneliness is knowing that we're all one thing. There isn't loneliness in the interaction with the other me's, which you are. You are another me. I'm another you. This is another experience for us to be able to channel and learn through one another based upon how we share energy. Again, like I spoke of, I could choose to be the angry, vindictive variation of myself, or I could choose to be the loving, kind gesture that I display so that I can relate to those around me who have been in pain. I frequently choose, through my situations, through my experience, continued to be this. Um, and I like to say, be safe, always, always. And that's a little curse, just a reminder, because it's been like 2 months. Maybe you guys haven't been cursed in a while. And I felt like it was a curse because I wanted to die at one point, but I was always safe in all ways. And I say that it's ALL space WAYS, comma ALWAYS. Always, always. Um, I recently ran into a lotus flower who was a lovely blossom to look at, but in order to pick them, it would mean sacrificing a lot of emotional turmoil, and I didn't do that. Lotus would say all is well. So all is well, always, always. Rather than denote that safety is something that you can be, safety is a mindset. Like you, you don't get to be depressed. Depression is a mindset. You can say that you no longer are having pleasure with your current experience, and then you can change that experiencing, alleviating said depression. Anxiety is a mindset. It is you trying to plan for the future or you trying to avoid the past. It isn't something you are. It is an experience you're going through. So, all is well, always, always. Thank you for listening to another episode of Bearli Doing Stuff, now with words and videos. Because if you're choosing to go to the YouTube and watch this, then you will see it as it was recorded by itself live, no edits. This is episode 4 of season 2 of Bearli Doing Stuff Now with Words. I appreciate you guys wholeheartedly. I acknowledge that you being present is the best thing you can do. Whether you choose anger, whether you choose to live in peace, regardless of what it is, you are doing it, and it is an expression that will get you to another point in your life. Recognize that you're making a choice, and then stick with that choice. And if that choice no longer works for you, then allow yourself the space of change, not forgiveness, because you didn't do anything wrong. You allowed yourself to have an experience. Whether it caused pain is a different story, but there are no wrongs, because you either learn that you like something and it works effectively for you, or you learn that you don't like it and it does not effectively do anything for you or the plan that you have going forward. For me, I learned that being resilient, tie it all back into a circle, was more effective for me than trying to end my own life. And I hope that someone out there can hear that there is more to life than wanting to end it, because we are all special little stars. We are all very specific songs that will never be played again. This is the only time we get to have our song heard, is while we're operating this vessel. So again, you guys have a wonderful day. I really appreciate you again coming out here to share some time with me, and all is well, always, always.